Did Wall Street lie to you? Or did you just want to believe in a shortcut to riches? We are told that money is a stable, reliable construct, that it sits in vaults, guarded by laws and logic. But what if the most sophisticated financial empire of the last decade was built on a foundation of pure smoke and mirrors? In the mid-2010s, a digital gold rush gripped the planet. Bitcoin was the new frontier, and the world was infected by a single, burning fear: the fear of being left behind. It was a global itch that everyone wanted to scratch. People stopped looking for interest rates and started looking for miracles. They watched the charts, they refreshed their browsers, and they waited for the signal that would change their lives forever. But the hunger for wealth creates a blind spot. It turns skepticism into a liability. It makes the impossible look like an opportunity. While the world stared at the flashing numbers, the stage was being set for a masterclass in deception. The system was wide open, and millions of people were already walking toward the edge, waiting for someone to show them how to jump. One woman saw that fear and turned it into the ultimate weapon. Meet Dr. Ruja Ignatova. She did not arrive like a tech mogul. She moved with the gravity of a sovereign. She carried an Oxford PhD like a shield and a voice that cut through the noise of 1,000 trading floors. In 2014, the lights at Wembley Arena hit a fever pitch. Thousands of people packed the seats, their eyes fixed on the center of the stage. She stood amidst the roar, surrounded by the heat of pyrotechnics, holding the attention of every person in the room. She looked out over the crowd, and for a moment, the cheering stopped. She spoke, and the silence was absolute. She did not just present a product, she presented a vision of the world where the rules no longer applied. The audience leaned in. They watched her every gesture, waiting for the words that would grant them entry into a new life. She looked like the exception to every rule they had ever been told. She looked like the future, and for that hour, under the bright stadium lights, she was the only thing that mattered. She pointed a finger toward the ceiling, and the giant screens behind her flickered to life. "Banks have rigged the game against you," she announced, her voice echoing into every corner of the stadium. She spoke of locked vaults and invisible barriers, portraying the traditional financial system as a cage built to keep the working class in their place. Then she shifted. She introduced the key to the lock: OneCoin. It was not just a currency, it was a movement. She promised it would be the Bitcoin killer, a tool designed to bypass the gatekeepers and hand the power of finance back to the people. The pitch was engineered for simplicity. She did not talk about cryptographic hashing or decentralized nodes. She talked about educational packages. Buy the knowledge, get the tokens, and watch your future unfold. It sounded like a school curriculum, but it was sold as a path to generational wealth. She framed it as a risk-free ascent to the top. Millions heard the message and felt the logic click into place. It was clean. It was accessible. It was a promise that felt like a guarantee. For those struggling to keep their heads above water, the choice was simple: stay in the current system and fail, or follow her and win. The message traveled faster than any currency. From the industrial hubs of Europe to the crowded markets of Asia, the promise took root in living rooms and kitchens. People did not just invest, they liquidated their lives. A man in Berlin signed the papers to mortgage his home, his hand trembling as he pushed the pen across the page. A family in Seoul sold their only vehicle, piling the cash into an account they barely understood. They were buying a dream that felt more tangible than the dirt beneath their feet. They logged into their private dashboards every morning, eyes darting to the screen before they even had their coffee. The numbers on the display were climbing, a steady, predictable, vertical line upward. It was a digital heartbeat. Every increase sent a jolt of relief through them, a chemical reward for their sacrifice. They stopped looking at their bank statements and started staring at the web portal. The numbers were not money, but they felt like it. They were not assets, but they looked like security. They were trapped in a cycle of checking, clicking, and waiting for the next surge. They were convinced they were watching their own liberation in real time, never realizing the screen was simply reflecting their own desire back at them. By the dawn of 2017, the machine had reached a terrifying velocity. $4 billion in cash had flowed from the pockets of the hopeful into the grasp of the architect. It was a mountain of capital built on the labor of people who had sold everything they owned. While her followers sat in cramped rooms, refreshing screens and calculating their future wealth, she was living a different reality. She moved between capitals, purchasing sprawling mansions in London that echoed with emptiness. She filled private yachts with high-priced art pieces that cost more than the collective net worth of an entire village of her investors. The contrast was absolute. One side of the ledger was defined by sacrifice, by empty savings accounts, and by the heavy silence of mortgaged homes. The other side was defined by consumption, by the smell of fresh paint in new estates, and the cold weight of stolen masterpieces. She stood at the center of this orbit, a titan of shadow wealth, watching the numbers climb. She knew the math of her own empire. She knew the source of every cent. The irony was suffocating. Every luxury she touched was a physical manifestation of someone else's broken promise. The system was now so bloated that the pressure on the foundation became impossible to ignore. The moral weight of the $4 billion was beginning to tilt the scale. The revolution was a lie written in code. Investors were told they were buying into a decentralized, cryptographic future, a ledger that could never be tampered with. They spoke of blockchain with the reverence of a new religion, but the truth was hidden behind a simple login screen. There was no blockchain. There was no complex encryption protecting their wealth. Behind the curtain, the entire empire rested on a standard SQL database, the kind of basic software used for a small company's inventory list. It was a digital spreadsheet, masquerading as a global financial shift. Every transaction, every token, and every mining record existed only as a line of text in a central, editable table. She could change a balance with a single keystroke. She could delete a fortune in a second. This was not the future of finance. It was the oldest trick in the book, scaled to a global level. The decentralized dream was a centralized trap. When the tech experts finally peeled back the layers, they found no ledger, no nodes, and no security. They found empty air. The magic was gone, leaving behind the cold, hard reality of a classic pyramid scheme. The numbers on the screen were just pixels, and the foundation of the empire was nothing more than a blank, hollow void. The silence in the office was no longer the quiet of a controlled empire. It was the suffocating stillness of a trap. By late 2017, the pace of the world changed. The reports were no longer just online rumors. They were legal documents. The U.S. Department of Justice had finalized a sealed indictment, and the reach of that paper was moving across borders. Every notification on her phone carried the weight of a closing gate. The regulators were not just asking questions anymore. They were mapping her movements, tracing the flow of the stolen billions, and dismantling the network of lawyers and associates who had kept the machine running. She watched the news from behind heavy curtains, the distance between her and the law shrinking with every hour. She knew the ledger was hollow. She knew the numbers she had fabricated were now evidence of a massive crime. The walls were physically encroaching on her space. Every knock at the door, every sudden delay in an airport, and every hushed conversation among her staff served as a reminder. The game had shifted from expansion to survival. She stood in the center of her suite, surrounded by the physical artifacts of her theft, and realized the math had finally come due. The time for excuses had ended. The space for escape was vanishing. October 25th, 2017. The morning air at Sofia Airport was crisp, smelling of jet fuel and cold concrete. She did not arrive in a private hangar, surrounded by security or luxury transport. She walked into the terminal alone, blending into the morning rush of travelers. No sirens followed her. No guards blocked her path. She reached the counter, presented her documents, and bought a single ticket on a standard budget flight bound for Athens. Every step was calculated to avoid the spotlight that had defined her previous years. She moved through the security checkpoint with a steady pulse, hands tucked into pockets, eyes forward. She did not look back at the empire she had built or the millions who were currently refreshing their accounts in vain. She reached the boarding gate, scanned her pass, and stepped onto the gangway. Inside the cabin, she took a window seat and waited. As the engines roared to life, the ground began to pull away. She watched the tarmac shrink until the airport was just a gray smudge below the clouds. She was no longer the Cryptoqueen or the face of a financial revolution. She was a ghost in the sky, crossing the border into the void, leaving a global vacuum of betrayal in her wake. The void she left behind did not stay empty for long. While the architect of the scheme vanished, the structure she built collapsed under the weight of its own lies. In the following months, the machinery of justice began to grind. Her brother, once a central figure in the operation, found himself behind bars. Her lead lawyers, the men and women who validated the hollow ledger faced the reality of prison walls. They were the ones who stayed, the ones who could not step into the void. But the true weight of the deception fell on the millions who had believed. Across the globe, screens flickered with the same message: access denied, account empty. Families who had mortgaged their homes and sold their vehicles logged in, hoping for a sign of recovery, only to find nothing but rows of zeros. The dream of generational wealth evaporated, leaving them with worthless digital tokens and the bitter taste of betrayal. They gathered in online forums, sharing stories of lost savings and shattered plans, clutching their phones like anchors in a storm. The reality was cold and absolute. The money was gone. The empire was air. And for those left in the wake of the Cryptoqueen, the only thing remaining was the silence of an empty wallet. Today, she remains a ghost on the most wanted lists of the world, a phantom presence haunting the edges of the digital frontier. But the danger did not disappear with her. We live in an era where trust is traded like currency, and the most lethal weapon is no longer steel or powder. It is a promise flickering on a screen, backed by nothing but the pixels that display it. She proved how easily a desperate public can be led to build a monument out of thin air. Now, the question remains: how many other empires are currently rising on the same hollow foundation? We scroll through our feeds, we invest our time and our capital into the next big thing, and we rarely stop to ask what lies beneath the interface. Is it code? Is it value? Or is it just another layer of smoke? As you look at your own screens today, consider the invisible architectures you rely on. The Cryptoqueen was not a singular anomaly. She was a mirror. She showed us exactly what we wanted to see, and we willingly handed her the keys. Somewhere, right now, another promise is being made. Another screen is glowing. Another empire is being built. Will you recognize the void before it opens beneath you?